Hey friend, welcome back to Bible Tract Echoes. I'm Mike McCurry, your host. Thank you so very much for the opportunity I have today to speak to you. We began yesterday in Leviticus chapter 9. We've been talking about this theme of playing with fire. I think of my little nephew, Matthew. He is just scrumptious. Had the opportunity to spend some time with his parents, and we had a fire in their backyard, a little bonfire, nothing too major. Well, I shouldn't say that. It got a little bigger than we intended. We had a lot of brush on there. It had been very dry, and that wood was ready to burn, and it was leaping up. I mean, those flames were about, we didn't put any accelerant. There was no gasoline. There was no fire starters, nothing like that. Just a little bit of cardboard underneath it all, and we fired it up. And within probably minutes, less than 5, it was leaping almost 8 feet in the air. We were thinking, oh, goodness gracious. Regardless, though, whether it was 8 feet high or just 2 feet high, once it finally burnt down a little bit, we kept little Matthew. Now, he's a little over a year old, something like that, maybe, year or two. We kept Matthew away from the fire. Now, there are very few things I can say no to Matthew about. Matthew is awesome. Love Matthew. He just toddles around. He's like I said, he's scrumptious is what he is. But I don't have any problem telling him when he's looking at the fire, just longingly, I'm going to go over there. He sees his older cousins, Emmy and Lucy, my daughters. He sees them throwing branches or little sticks and things in. And my girls, of course, have been taught you stay away from the fire. You got to be at least this far away. And if you want to throw something bigger in, you ask Dad for help and I'll throw it in for you or what have you. But Matthew, he's not allowed within, 10 feet of the fire because he can be quick, that guy. He's a just chubby little scrumptious guy. But he can, when he's now walking all that, he can get moving when he wants to. And so if he's standing there looking at the fire, everyone around, all the adults are looking at him, right? Because they don't want him playing with fire. Well, in Leviticus chapter number 9, we see two men, Aaron's boys, Nadab and Abihu, right on the heels of the consecration of the tabernacle, if you want to call it that. Wonderful service happens. God literally sends fire down to lick up the burnt offering. And immediately after, in chapter number 10, Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them a censer and put fire therein and put incense thereon and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not. These young men lost their lives because of a decision they made, and we're going to look at how ridiculous that decision was. I mentioned yesterday that these boys, they spiritually played with fire even though they had been saved from slavery. They'd been called out along with all of the Israelites out of Egypt. They could have been part of the 430 years of slavery, but they just happened to be, no coincidence, but they were born in the generation where God allowed them to see rescue from that strange land of Egypt, and they got to see the Red Sea. They got to see all these things. They were saved from slavery. They were saved from slaughter. What I'm trying to communicate right now is how utterly absurd it was that they felt the need right on the heels of God sending his righteous fire. They felt the need to offer strange fire. They were saved from starvation. Not just depression of slavery, not just death and slaughter, but desperation of starvation. Think about the miracles they saw in the food provided. Exodus chapter 16. Then said the Lord, this is verse number 4 of Exodus 16. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. At what point does it become old hat that God is literally sprinkling food down for 2.5+ million people? Nadab and Abihu, apparently seeing God's obvious miracle of fire and seeing God's miracle of redeeming them from slavery and seeing God's, all of these, they still chose the ridiculous path of playing with fire. Saved from slavery, from starvation, from slaughter. Not just that, though, they were sanctified to service. Look at Exodus chapter 28 and verse 1. Exodus 28, verse 1, and take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother, this is God speaking to Moses, and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. And then verse number 40 and 41, and for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles, and bonnets shalt thou make for them for glory and for beauty, and thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother and his sons with him, and shalt anoint them and consecrate them and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. What an incredible thing that these young men got to be part of such an important position. They were the Lord's priests. And yet, that wasn't enough. Saved from all these things, sanctified to service. Not just that, you can't act like ignorance is an excuse for Nadab and Abihu. You say, well, it's early on in the tabernacle service. It's early on in the offerings. Maybe Nadab and Abihu, they didn't know. Now, you got to realize, on the scale of grace to truth, I lean grace to a fault. I am too gracious most of the time. I don't say that braggingly. I say that as a fault. Sometimes the most gracious thing you can do is tell the truth, and I'm learning that. But I always want to give the benefit of the doubt. I always want to, and sometimes it bites me in the rear end. But let's give the benefit of the doubt. Oh, maybe Nadab and Abihu, they didn't know, and God was so mean, and he judged them, even though No. Realize this. They were not just sanctified to service. They hadn't just been given fancy clothes and a title. They had settled the standards. Exodus chapter 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and 31 gave all kinds of precise instructions about the priestly duty. And if that wasn't enough, Leviticus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all about the sacrifices, that there's exactly how every jot and tittle, every single little iota of standards. I realize that's a dirty word in modern Christianity, standards. No. God has standards. And he had settled them for Aaron, for Nadab, and Abihu. And let me say this as well, while I'm on this note. Don't try to pull the I don't or I didn't understand. The book, the Bible, is not made to be opaque. It's not made to be difficult. It's not made to be foggy. It's clear. It's like looking at ourselves in a looking glass. It is very evident. Now, we can quibble over the precise principles that we want, the convictions we want to protect, and what exact principles and how we want to protect them, whether it be with modesty or music or the message or you name it. We can quibble over some of those things, but there are many standards that are so obvious. And Nadab and Abihu, it was obvious to them. And yet, they chose to overlook 16, 17, 18, or was it 18 chapters? 18 chapters worth of precise instructions, but that wasn't all. And this is really what grabbed me about this passage. And really, the passage we're about to read is what kind of really caused me to think that this might be something that God would have me to lean into on the broadcast. Go to Exodus 24. I want you to read this with me. Exodus chapter 24. I'm going to turn over there myself. Got about 4 minutes left in the broadcast today. This is what I really want to communicate. We're going to get to the closing of this message tomorrow. But Exodus 24, and look at verse number 1. And he said unto Moses, God spoke unto Moses, come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. So they got to be part of this exclusive group that was going to worship God. But then look at verse number 9 of Exodus 24. Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, the same chapter we just read from, and they, get this now, they saw the God of Israel. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of a sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. I prefer to preach messages that speak to every one of my listeners. But truthfully, God wouldn't let me get away from this thought this week. You, not every single one of you, but I'm talking to you. Those of you that God has his hands on you, he's got his claws in you, and you know you can't get away from this right now. You have, I don't mean a 90-foot Jesus, I don't mean too many anchovies on your pizza last night. I mean, you've seen God work in your life, just like Nadab and Abihu. You haven't just settled his standards. You haven't just been sanctified to service. I'm talking to some people. Some of you grew up in church. Some of you have been around church. Some of you know what this book says. You can quote John 3:16, and you've not just been saved from slavery. These boys, like you, these boys saw the sovereign, and yet still chose to play with fire. Do you realize what a privilege it was? Psalm 103:2, bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits. What a benefit, what a privilege, what an honor, what an exclamation point. They've already been called out, they've been outfitted, they've been set apart, and then they got to see God. But just a short time later, it wasn't enough. I wonder if you're listening right now, I wonder why you are spiritually playing with fire. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the reasons why. Truthfully, I believe there's only one reason that I could get clarity from the Lord on as to why they offer strange fire. And we're going to sum up this thought tomorrow. I'm going to ask you to tune in. I greatly appreciate your listenership to this point, but please don't miss the broadcast as we conclude this thought, playing with fire, tomorrow. My name is Mike McCurry. You've been listening to Bible Tract Echoes. If you'd like to make sure you don't miss any of these broadcasts, you can find this broadcast as a podcast on demand. Just search for Bible Tract Echoes on your favorite podcast player, Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever it may be. And you can go to BibleTractsInc.org to order some free gospel tracts as well. BibleTractsInc.org. Have a great day for his glory. We'll talk to you soon. God bless.
Thank you for joining us today for Bible Tract Echoes, a ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. If you would like to receive a free sample booklet of all of our tracts, you can contact us by calling 309-828-6888. That's 309-828-6888. Our mailing address is P.O. Box 130, Dwight, Illinois 60420. A faster way to contact us is to go to our website at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. There you will find more information about our ministry and details on how you can support Bible Tracts Incorporated. Thanks for listening, and may the Lord richly bless you as you serve Him.